Hey guys, it's Lauren. This is Books and Tea and All Things Me, and I am so glad that you are here today. Today I am going to be doing my November wrap-up video, and I'm sorry in advance if I sound a little sniffly, if I look a little bit under the weather. I tried my best just to look perky and happy, but I'm not feeling that great. However, I still am just so excited to share with you what I read in the month of November, so I'm just gonna push through. And it's raining outside, but the lighting's still okay, so we're just gonna go for it. All right, so in the month of November, I read 13 books. 4 of those were graphic novels and 3 of them were buddy reads. So I'll tell you a little bit more about those and who I read them with as I get to those books. But I just had a great reading month. I had 15 books on my TBR and I didn't finish 2 of them, which were The Night Circus and Fire Study. And so you'll see those in my December TBR because I do still plan on reading them in the month of December. Just didn't have the time to do it in the month of November. I'm a little bit bummed because I was really hoping that I could get through all 15 books. Like, I knew it was a really big goal, but I really wanted to get there and just didn't have the time. So I'm still really happy with the 13 books that I read. I had a lot of really good reads this month. I gave a lot of 5-star, 4-star ratings, and I don't know if it was just because I was just loving reading this month or because I really did read a lot of really good books. I don't know, maybe I kept feeling like, oh, I gave this a 5 too, and maybe it didn't deserve it, but I just really loved it. So I don't know, I may have just been in a 5-star mood this month because I don't give 5 stars out very easily, but I gave a lot of them this month. So keep that in mind, but I really did enjoy almost everything that I read this month, and I can't wait to tell you about them, so let's get started. The first book I read this month was To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han, and this is a book about this girl who writes love letters to all the boys she's ever loved before, and she keeps them away, hides them in her room, and it's just kind of a way for her to let out all of her feelings and to get over the guys. And one day, her letters get mysteriously sent out in the mail to these boys, and so the story is just her dealing with the repercussions of that, dealing with what happens when these boys know all of her deepest, darkest feelings about them. She says, you know, some nice things about them in some of the letters, and in other parts of the letters she'll say some kind of mean things. And so yeah, it's just really interesting. I really liked this book. I gave it 4 stars. Now that I'm thinking back on it, it probably didn't quite deserve the 4, but it's not really a 3 to me either, so I'll keep the 4-star rating. I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed reading it. There were some things I didn't like about it. I just felt like it was a little bit juvenile for me as a reader who is 25 years old. I just couldn't really relate that well with Lara Jean, the main character in the book, and I don't know, I really enjoyed it. I loved the family dynamics of everything, and I really did like the storyline too. But yeah, just kind of a light, fluffy read, 4 stars. Yeah, it was good. The next book that I read was a graphic novel, and it was Saga Volume 1, and this is sort of a space opera story. 2 people from opposing lands, so it like one comes from a planet and the people on the planet have wings, and one comes from the planet's moon and those people have horns, and so they're at war with each other, and these 2 people, one from each, fall in love, they have a baby, and everybody's chasing after them through space, and it's just really good. You guys, I really liked this. I was not expecting to like it as much as I did. When I first read it, I first opened it and I saw some pretty graphic things, some really foul language, and I was a little bit nervous, but I just fell in love with these characters. I absolutely am in love. Like, it's so good. And so I gave this first volume 4 stars. I did read the second volume as well this month, and I gave that one 5 stars. I really enjoyed volume 2. I loved getting to meet the grandparents, and I just liked the story a little bit better. I think it's because I understood the world a little bit more fully, and I understood the history behind the story a little bit more in this one, and so I was just able to read it without having to wonder what was going on, and just I really enjoyed it. 5 stars. I'm so excited to continue on with this graphic novel series. The third book I finished this month is The Best Yes by Lisa TerKeurst, and this is a Christian nonfiction sort of a Christian living type of book, and I read this with my Bible study that I lead at church, and it was fantastic. If you are a Christian woman and you are struggling with the busyness of life and learning what to say yes and what to say no to and just getting your priorities straight, this is wonderful. It just helps you understand how to make wise decisions and really helps you to determine what it is that you should be seeking out in life. And I love this. 5 stars. Lisa TerKeurst is hilarious. Her writing is awesome, and she has a really great ability to create these analogies of certain things that she's trying to explain to you and getting you to remember them. Like, there's so many analogies in this book that I will remember forever, and it just really helps me to retain what I've read. The next book that I read was Sugar Skulls by Lisa Mantchev and Glenn Dallas, and I did a full video review on this book. If you're interested in checking it out, I will link it down below. This was a book that I got from NetGalley in exchange for an honest review, and I loved this book. I'm still thinking about this one even though I read it towards the beginning of the month. It was so action-packed. I loved the characters. I loved the story. It was so unique, and I highly recommend it. I have not heard anybody talking about this book, and I think more people need to read it. So please go read it. Go watch my review. It's so wonderful. The next book that I finished this month was Every Last Word by Tamara Ireland Stone, and I buddy read this book with Grace from Grace with the Book in Her Face. I will link her channel down below. I had so much fun reading this book with Grace. This was not a book that I was really that interested to read. I let Grace kind of pick some suggestions, and I think I picked this one from a list of books that she had said she wanted to read, and I was like, oh, this is sort of intriguing, but I wasn't really that into it when we started. I didn't really like the first part of the book. The story revolves around a high school girl who struggles with OCD, and the beginning part had a lot to do with this friend group that she's a part of, and I hated her friends. Like, I was so annoyed. They were driving me nuts. Seriously, it was so like mean girls, gossipy, everybody was super petty about stuff, and like, oh, just a lot of like jealousy and just mean high school girl stuff, and I really did not like it at first, but it was just such a awesome experience to read this with Grace because she enjoyed the book the whole way through, but I didn't like it at first, and by the end of it, I loved it. This story is so beautiful. The main character, she struggles with this OCD, but it's more of the obsessive thoughts part of the disorder rather than the compulsions. She does have some compulsions as well, like she has to do everything in threes, so she won't park her car unless her odometer is ending on a 3, and so a lot of that is really crippling for her, but it's the obsessive thoughts that just spiral out of control that really control her life. I have some anxiety myself, so I was able to relate to that a little bit, and the story is just so beautiful. She meets this group of friends who have this underground poetry club, and she starts writing poetry, and it kind of just helps her release all of these thoughts that are swirling around in her head, and she falls in love with a boy along the way, and it's just a really beautiful story about like acceptance, and just a really, I thought it was a great portrayal of mental health disorders. She has a really healthy relationship with her therapist, and I loved that because a lot of times you do not see that in books about mental health. A lot of times the therapist is portrayed as the bad guy, and this was just a really healthy relationship. I just thought it was beautiful. I gave this book a 5 stars. If you couldn't tell, it was wonderful, and thank you, Grace, for reading with me. I had such a good time. The next book I read was Lock and Key Volume 1 by Joe Hill, and I really liked this as well. This is another graphic novel series, and it's more on the horror mystery with some fantasy, paranormal type stuff going on. I don't really know how to describe it, but I think this series has a little bit of something for everyone. I just really liked it. It's pretty violent in the beginning. At the first part, I was like, ooh, this is a little bit much for me, a lot of blood, but I loved it. I can't wait to read the second volume, and I just need to know what happens next. I am so intrigued. I gave this book a 4-star rating. The next book that I read was also a buddy read, and I buddy read this book with Karen from A Simple Cup of Tea. I will link her channel down below. We read Shadow and Bone, the first book in the Grisha trilogy from Leigh Bardugo, and I loved this book too. I gave this book a 5 stars. It is fantastic. I went into this book not really knowing anything about what it was about. I did not understand, like when people had described it in other wrap-ups or other review videos, I just didn't get it. I didn't understand what the story was about. I had no idea what I was walking into, and so I was pleasantly surprised. This book is very unique. The storyline and just what happens in the story is so different from anything I've ever read before. It is so like obscure. I couldn't believe that the whole story revolved around this big thing that people have to cross, and I didn't get it, but after reading it, I get it. It works. It's so good. I love the characters. I love the Darkling. I just have this secret crush, both Karen and I do, and we're just hoping that he redeems himself at some point because, oh yes, he's so swoony. Like seriously, love him. So anyways, Karen and I have decided that we are going to read the second and the third books in the month of December. We're gonna finish out the trilogy together, and I'm just so excited because I loved this book so much. The next book I finished was The Casket Girls by Elise Arden, and this was another book that I got from NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. I gave this book 3 stars. I did do a full video review on it. I will link it down below if you want to check it out. I really did enjoy this book despite the 3-star rating. The reason why I rated it 3 stars was because it was very long, and I felt like it was a little bit slow at certain points. But I loved the story. I thought it was very interesting. It revolves around a lot of New Orleans history and a lot of myths and legends that kind of go along with that culture in the French Quarter. And so I just really enjoyed that. I've never read anything about New Orleans before, and I think it's very interesting. The culture down there is so different from anywhere else in the United States, and yeah, just really enjoyed it. Check out my video if you want to know a little bit more, but I think you should definitely give this book a try if you are interested in that kind of a thing. It is a vampire story. Didn't know that going into it, but it was good. I really liked it. The next book I read was Since You've Been Gone by Morgan Matson, and I liked this book. I didn't love it. I gave this book a 3-star rating. I was in the mood for some more contemporary stuff after I had finished To All the Boys I've Loved Before, and so I picked this one up because I thought I would really like it. I knew it was sort of like a summery read, and it's obviously not summer right now, but I decided to read it anyways, and it was just okay. I liked it. I thought it was cute. Yeah, just 3 stars. It was just cute. If you don't know what this book is about, it's about a girl whose best friend just disappears one day and kind of leaves her this bucket list of things that she wants her to do. It's all stuff that's really outside of the main character's comfort zone. It's stuff like kiss a stranger, go skinny dipping, things like that. So it just follows her story as she goes and she completes all these tasks because she thinks that if she completes them all that she will find out what happened to her friend, and along the way she meets some new friends, and it's a good story. I thought it was really cute, but just nothing outstanding. The next book I finished was The Titan's Curse by Rick Riordan, and this is the 3rd book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. This is my favorite book in the series so far. For those of you who don't know, I've never read this series before, so I'm going through this for the first time and I'm loving it. I love these characters. I love the Greek mythology and the gods and the adventure and the humor. It's just awesome. I love this. This is my favorite one so far. I thought that the quest that they were on was just really entertaining and action-packed and full of fun new characters. I really liked the hunters and Thalia, or Talia, I don't know how you say her name, having her back in the story. I thought she just brought something new to the story as well, and just really enjoyed this. I can't wait to continue on and finish off this series. The second to the last book that I read this month was another buddy read, and I buddy read this book with Trina from Between Chapters. So thank you, Trina, for agreeing to read this with me, and we read Walk on Earth a Stranger by Rae Carson. This is the first book in a trilogy, and I can't find the name of the trilogy anywhere, but I think it's called the Gold Seeker trilogy, possibly. So anyways, this book follows a girl who has the ability to sense gold, and it's her trek across the United States to California during the gold rush era. And she has to disguise herself as a boy and travel with strangers, and it's just a really great survival story. I loved this book. Trina loved it too. If you watch her wrap up, she thought it was a 5-star read as well. We just had so much fun with this, and it was so fun to discuss everything with her and just to hear what her thoughts were too. I just I loved this. Like, if any of you played the Oregon Trail when you were in elementary school, that's what this reminded me of. I was just like so nostalgic the whole time because I just kept thinking about playing that game and I kept wondering how people were gonna die next. And I know that's really morbid, but it's what happened. It's the truth. This is like very historically accurate. So anyways, I just loved this. I cannot wait to see where this series goes next. I really don't know where she's gonna go with it. I mean, I have an idea, but it seems like this was such an obvious plot line this time as she makes her way across America, and now that she's in California, I don't know what's gonna happen. So I'm really excited to find out. And the final book I read, I actually finished like in the morning on December 1 because my husband made me turn the lights off to go to bed and I couldn't quite finish it at the end of the night on November 30. So I'm just gonna count it anyways because I read most of it in November, and that is The Sculptor by Scott McCloud. This is another graphic novel and it's a big one. But I really enjoyed this. I was not expecting it to be so deep. This is a really deep, heavy read. Basically, the main character, David, he is a struggling artist and he's really struggling to get by. He doesn't have any prospects in his life at the time, and he meets like his great uncle who's basically death, like the Grim Reaper. And his uncle gives him the option to give up his life for his art. And if he agrees to only live for the next 200 days, he will be given the ability to sculpt anything with his bare hands. And that means granite, wood, metal, anything. Anything that he touches, he can sculpt into whatever he wants. And so he agrees to do this, and shortly after he meets a girl, falls in love, and realizes that he maybe made a mistake by agreeing to give up his life. And he starts doing all these things in order to try to get his art noticed. And so he turns into like this nighttime sculptor, and he like sculpts stuff in the streets and out of buildings and very public places. And so then he's running from the law. And anyways, I don't want to tell you what the whole story is about, but I really liked this. There were some things that I thought were a little bit wrong with this. It's sort of an insta love situation with the main character and the girl that he falls in love with, and she's a little bit crazy. She has some sort of psych disorder and refuses to take her meds, and she's sort of just like this very free-spirited, careless girl who doesn't give a crap what anybody thinks, and she's sort of annoying, but I sort of liked her at the same time. So I don't really know, but overall liked this book. I gave it 4 stars. So that is it. That is all the books I read in the month of November. I hope you enjoyed this wrap up. And if you have any questions about any of the books or you've read them and want to talk about them, please comment down below. I would love to hear if you have read any of these or if you're planning to read any of them. I will be filming and uploading my December TBR soon, so you can look forward to that. And I will see you all in my next video. Bye.